Hello everyone, and welcome back to... Keenan, what's the name of our show again?
Classic mode!
Classic mode, that's the one. We went to classic mode, where it is a little game made by some French guys, I think?
I think so, probably.
Yeah? Which means it's banned here, but whatever. Called Beyond Good and Evil. With me today, I have Keenan.
Hello.
Kyle.
What's up?
And Nico.
Hello.
Shut up, Nico, no one cares.
Wow.
Wow.
Rude.
Just because he's French, you gotta treat him like that.
Yes, it all makes sense now.
I think we kind of decided before that given how Beyond Good and Evil is slightly more of a linear game than the previous three we played, or at least in terms of how long it takes, I'll probably go with a much more structured format this time. So I suppose we should start with what is Beyond Good and Evil?
I think the way I sold it to Keenan when I was telling him you should play this game, it's like basically like an old style like adventure game, kind of like the older 3D Zeldas, like Ocarina or Wind Waker, but much faster paced, a little simpler than that.
Yeah.
And it's set in a sci-fi kind of theming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty much what it is.
And then you got some dungeons. You got some exploration. You got a little bit. You got some keys. You got some puzzles. It's mediocre shit. I'm
Totally unbiased.
A lot of people are going to be very unhappy with that.
Good. I'm glad.
I mean, in theory, if a lot of people watched the show, which they don't,
yeah.
but if they did, they'd be very unhappy with that.
If anyone watches at all, they'd be mad with me. So, Nico,
Hi, that's me.
why don't you start off with how you felt about it overall?
Well, initially I had a problem with this game because I was fine. I was liking it. I was getting through the dungeons, and then turns out I run into a softlock bug. It's quite common. Turns out. So yeah, I ended up just waiting a while for a save, and then I ended up beating it.
Just chill out for a bit. Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I do lean towards liking the game. I've definitely been sold on this game being one of those like godlike, oh, you have to play this. This is the best game ever. It definitely didn't live up to that hype for me, but it was still good. Like I have a few gripes with it, but yeah, overall I like it.
I think it might be worth providing context for that, actually, for anyone who doesn't know. That Beyond Good and Evil was one of those games on the GameCube era that didn't get basically any attention when it came out, and then became kind of a cult classic. So none of us played it back then. None of us played it when we were kids. We all just like heard about it. How it was apparently this great game, and there was a sequel that kept getting delayed or whatever. And then it was shortly after they re-announced the sequel in like 2017, I think, that I was then like, all right, I'm going to see what all this fuss is about. Like, it looked like Beyond Good and Evil 2 was going to be a big deal for Ubisoft, so I was like, I'm going to see what this supposedly amazing game is all about. And then I played it, and I immediately fell in love with it. And then I went to everyone else and was like, guys, you have to play this fucking game. And then I eventually convinced Keenan to.
Yeah.
And then I basically watched him play it. And so me and Keenan, this is both of our second times playing it.
Yeah.
We're playing it for the first time.
Yeah, this is my first.
We should probably go through and mention which platforms we played it on, and how much of the game we actually finished.
I think so.
I think we all played on the GameCube, right?
Yeah, we all played, yeah.
Didn't we all emulate it?
Yeah, we all.
Yeah.
We all.
We played the GameCube version
Oh, right.
on,
yes.
on an emulator.
But I mean,
Yeah.
I more meant it's probably worth mentioning that we emulated it just in case any of the
Okay.
points are like, oh, that might have been a weird emulation glitch as opposed to.
And also, just to point out, we emulated it because the Steam version is fucking broken right now for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Don't know what the hell that's about, but it's broken
It
as
is
fuck.
really fucking
The Steam
harsh.
version's only in French as well. I couldn't get it in English. And even when you load it up, like, bear in mind, I have a GTX 3060 Ti, and the game still ran at like 20 FPS.
You know what the funny thing was about that performance issue?
What?
I put an EMB thing on it, which you know is usually the type of thing to make the game look better and usually take up more resources. After putting that on, it run like 5 times as quick. I don't know what fucking
Nice.
shit they fixed.
Yeah, see,
but
I
it was
I looked at getting
fucking
some
weird.
modern graphics upgrades, but I just on PC before I realised it didn't work. I was like, I can't even play it as it was.
It was weird because the first time I played it was the Steam version, like a few years ago, and it was fine. I don't know what they did recently to it. But
Could be
like,
I
anything.
don't know.
Anyway,
But yeah.
Nico, why don't we? I believe you were summarising your thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, I didn't have. I definitely found myself when I wasn't playing it because of the issue. I did really want to go back to it, so that is a good point. You know, on his behalf, like, yeah, I did enjoy my time with it, but definitely felt. I don't know if it's like it was overhyped or I felt like I wanted more from the game. I think it's a bit of both, where I felt like it didn't feel like it had as much as I'd hoped. I was like, I really wish there was more.
it's definitely one of those things where you maybe would have felt differently if you'd gone with no expectations. But it's just
yeah,
like
yeah.
because it's one of those things where like it's probably not as good as most people say. It's just that because it didn't get any attention, people want to big it up and be
Yeah,
like, no, you
it's-
got to play this.
It's classic cult game thing. Yeah, so
Okay.
but yeah.
So how about we go to the next obvious person, Kyle? Tell
Yeah,
us
what?
tell us your thoughts
Oh,
about the
okay.
game. Like, I don't really care. I don't really care about your other thoughts.
I don't have any of those.
That's true.
I had a realization during this playthrough that, and I know this isn't going to resonate with any of you guys.
What makes you possibly say that?
Totally personal to me. I think this game might be my favorite game, which I think before would have been either Mario Galaxy
Another bad
Or-
choice.
or Twilight Princess, which is a bad choice. But
I wouldn't say that.
and I love both of those games. I love them both to pieces, but I'm thinking about this one now and just like how immediately it grabbed me. I was telling you guys, like, as soon as this game started again, I just remembered how much I loved it. And
Yeah.
just the entire time I was playing it, I was just having nothing but a good time. I mean, I'm not so blind to it as to see it obviously has problems, right? There's definitely some old game jankiness with it. But, like, there's definitely nothing that, like, I think
Nothing.
they were being... nothing. There's nothing that I think that was, like, out of laziness. Because they clearly did a lot of things that they didn't need to do, and that a lot of games didn't do at the time to try and make things really accommodating and intuitive for the players. So I really get the feeling they really did want to do everything they could to make it as great a game as possible, right?
Yeah.
So I'm willing to forgive it for those things, especially because for me the peaks of the game are so high. I just love it.
Okay. Anything else you want to add, or
No,
nope?
let's go to for the sake of balance, let's go to a contrasting opinion. Max.
Well, like, it's not like it doesn't contrast you, because contrast implies I'm the other end of the scale, and I'm not. I just look. The game's all right. The game's it's okay. That's fair. That's not even entirely true. So I spent about 9 hours on the game overall.
Oh wow.
The first 3 hours is some of the most boring, tedious game I've ever played in my life. The last 6 hours, however, is really quite fun. And it's just a shame that the first, like... I played most of... Despite starting the game, like, a week and a half ago, I played most of it yesterday and today. Because I just couldn't bring myself to play after that, in like, those first initial few hours. Because I honestly just found the game so dull. I feel like this is probably... Anyone who would have seen the previous ones would have probably realised this a little bit by now. I don't really care for story. I'm far more of a gameplay first kind of guy. Not saying like that's good or bad. That's just I identify that that's the way I work when it comes to games. So if you present to me a good story, but that's weak gameplay wise, I'm not really gonna be digging it that much. But I feel like later on, the last 2 dungeons, which we'll get onto, really, really stepped up kind of how the gameplay was on those sections. And really was quite fun, as opposed to the first 2, I suppose. Yeah, Black Isle and the Factory, which felt like a lot slower and a lot more linear. But again, we can get into the specifics later. But yeah, once I got past that, I had a good time. And like I woke up this morning wanting to finish it and wanting to play it, which kind of like what Nico said. Whereas, if you'd asked me if I felt like that for the first 3 hours, I really couldn't bring myself. There were several evenings where I sat down and I was like, I really should play it, but I really just don't want to. And I didn't. I just did something else. So I just played some fucking Dark Souls or WoW or some shit. I just something I was like, I just can't bring myself to boot it up and play it. I'm probably my opinion is probably similar the most to Nico's, and that it was good. In parts, I mean, the better part probably differ is I thought the beginning was pretty fucking awful. Although I don't know how much that differs for you, Nico.
I found the beginning alright, personally.
Yeah, that's fair. But then, yeah, definitely it picks up later on. Yeah, pretty much it for me. Keenan.
Hi.
Hi there.
So, as Kyle kind of touched on, he described it originally as Zelda-y with some sci-fi and a splash of like Star Wars sort of fantasy sci-fi.
Which is why I was recommending it especially to Keenan.
Yeah.
Because if there's 2 things Keenan loves, it's Zelda and Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I was like,
those are my 2 things. And so I was a little worried that it wasn't going to live up to that for me when I first played it. And I got into it, and I sort of, at the beginning, I didn't really see the comparisons, but I was immediately in. Like, I was enjoying it from the get-go. And, like, as it progressed, I was like, okay, I'm understanding this a little bit more. And I just started liking it more and more and more. And overall, on both playthroughs, I really enjoyed it the whole way through. Again, like Kyle said, there are some pretty big issues with the game. But it didn't ever take away from my enjoyment of it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Before we dive into it, probably a good place to mention. If you haven't guessed by now, there's going to be spoilers for the entire thing.
Yep.
All of it. So if you haven't played this game that was made in 2001?
3.
Go play it or don't. I don't know. I'm not your dad. But yeah, I suppose without any further ado, probably get into the first dungeon, which I think is more of a mini dungeon. I feel like it's safe to say Black Isle is much more of a...
It's an introduction.
Yeah, it's like a tutorial
mechanics,
intro dungeon.
Very introductory.
Yes. So it's definitely... I mean, I forgot it was even a dungeon at first. And these guys had to remind me, like, oh, Max, are you missing one? Yeah. Does anyone really have anything to say about this? Because it was so short and simple that...
Well, if you wanted to get into the issues of the simplicity of it, like how Because you were saying how you were quite disinterested by certain elements of the game at that point.
Yeah, because like at first, I might be remembering this wrong, but the only puzzle, quote unquote, in the factory is not the factory. Black Isle is where you have to push the minecart up to the thing, and then like interact with the little wall cog. That's the only puzzle I can think of.
There's technically as well the orange things you have to knock down the pathways with.
Oh, yeah.
It's not really a puzzle.
Well, neither is pressing a switch.
I mean, that's kind of my point. Like,
Yes.
I feel like saying pressing a switch is kind of reaching for it, as is. But and I think I get a tutorial, so it's not meant to be difficult. But I also think it needs to introduce how the game is going to work when it eventually gets into it in a correct way. Which I don't think it did. So I think the puzzles were lacking, even though I feel like, and I'm really alone here, when I find a puzzle and the solution is just I didn't see something, that feels like a shit puzzle, even if it's got me stuck on it.
Yeah, because I didn't see that cog for a while.
I had to ask Keenan. I had to get Keenan to show me. I was like, Keenan, can you tell me what I need to do here?
I do remember in my first playthrough not seeing it as well.
Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of crappy.
Like, I get there's a point at the beginning where you turn a cog, so I tried to give it the benefit of that and be like, I guess it teaches you, but then at the same time I was like, it doesn't feel like I really applied any thinking to it. It was literally just like you said, it's just I found the right thing.
Yeah, I found the right thing
that
and I'm
I
going to
missed.
use it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it didn't really require anything.
It's not like the stealth sections later on, which are more like puzzles, where it's like, okay,
Yeah.
right, if I fire a disc over here, I can run past where this guy's patrolling and roll that way, and then shoot this guy in the back, get his friend to come over, and then run out the door or whatever.
Yeah.
I think I can agree that like Black Isle specifically is like it does have that thing of like it starts off being very very simple, obviously like just introducing to like here's how the flow of the game works, but then rather than being like having like another section afterwards where it's like, okay, now you've got the hang of it, here's some stuff you've actually got to figure out, it just kind of ends there.
Yeah, and I think the issue was because I hadn't seen any gameplay of Beyond Good and Evil before playing it. That's probably not entirely true. Actually, I probably saw you briefly play it, but I was never really that interested when I was watching it. So I didn't really pay that much attention.
Yeah.
So if you just get to the end of that dungeon, right, you might think at that point that's just what the whole game is.
Yes, and this is what brought up the point I raised to you about combat. I was like, okay, well maybe if the puzzling side of things isn't the focus, maybe the combat is, but the combat sucks as well. The combat, like you said, the attack button is literally contextual. You have one contextual button for combat that you can hold to do a charged up special attack. So I finished Black Isle being like, well, the puzzling was crap, and the combat was awful as well. So like, what's the deal with this game?
And you don't like story that much.
Yeah, and
so.
I'm not a big story guy. Like I don't enjoy games that have weak gameplay mechanics and good stories. That's generally not what I go for. And like
to be clear, the combat I don't think is awful. It's just purposefully simple because that's not the focus. If the focus of the game was combat and you were doing that all the time and it was exactly how it is, that would be pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's
fair.
Important thing that is that like I feel like the combat was never intended to be and particularly challenging, except maybe like the final boss I think is kind of challenging, but like for the most part it's pretty much there to enhance the like more the cinematic feel to it, because it definitely has that kind of thing like kind of Uncharted feel where it's trying to bring like a cinematic feel to a video game. And like it very much felt like the way the story is and the music and the way certain shots happen, like the way the camera moves around, feels like it's trying to present it like a movie. So it wants to kind of maintain that atmosphere. So if you got to a point in the game where like you couldn't progress because you kept getting stuck on this one fight, it kind of would drain away from the atmosphere.
Yeah.
In a little bit. So I think they wanted to purposefully make combat feel more like just, you know, not really as much a challenge to overcome, but just like, you know, not to say that it isn't like challenging at all. You can very easily get yourself killed.
But it's in my opinion, it's the bad kind of challenge though, where enemies just do a lot of damage and you don't have much HP.
You didn't have much HP.
I didn't have much HP, not at the beginning anyway. I think I did the factory with like 4 hearts. Well, actually, 'cause while we're on combat, given how that seems to be where we've gone into, I do have one good thing to say about the combat. The camera in the combat was actually pretty fucking good. I was surprised because I am obviously used to like the lock-on systems, but this game didn't have that. But it did have basically a fully game-controlled lock-on, where the game would work out what you need to be locked onto, and that always seemed to work pretty well for me.
Yeah, I found the same.
I never had situations where I was like, I can't see what it is I'm meant to be fighting or whatever.
It always gave you like a wide angle or exactly what you needed to see for the enemies that you're fighting.
Exactly, yeah. Like the camera always felt pretty spot on for that, which was it's a small thing, but it is quite nice. Because I feel like the combat would have been even more frustrating if every time it went into it, the camera just sucked.
Considering the time it released as well.
Yeah.
Usually games like that had fucking arse cameras. Like, it was terrible.
Yeah. I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that Ocarina of Time basically just locked on to your enemy for you with the camera as soon as you fucking held the block button up, that would have probably been a similar issue. But yeah, no, it did that quite well, which is something I just wanted to drop in, given how I feel like the previous 3 episodes I've complained about the camera.
True.
It's just that I would acknowledge a good one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very obviously like the combat is very much like that's not what you play the game for.
Yeah,
anyway.
definitely.
It's like the game is really about like narrative, exploration, puzzle solving, and combat. Like all of those things kind of mesh together.
The game's not going to feel good to play either because of the time it was made. Like, the example that I would use is, I think Bioshock Infinite is a good example of this. The gameplay's not necessarily deep, but it feels good. Like, shocking someone and then hitting them with a wrench or shooting them in the face with a pistol feels good. And I get that's like a first and third person difference as well, so maybe not the fairest comparison. Anyway, enough talking about that.
I think all of our opinions on the game really show like our difference in like what we personally want from a video game. Yeah, definitely. In that like, because as you were saying, Max, you're not super keen on story. I love stories in games, and so for me, because as we've been saying, like those like 4 things that the game are about, like narrative, exploration, puzzle solving, combat, undoubtedly the strongest point of all of that is the narrative is like comes in very strong at the beginning and is pretty consistently good all throughout the game, whereas those other 3 things kind of start off, as we said, with Black Isle being very understated and then slowly get more in depth as the game goes on.
Apart from combat.
So apart from the combat, so for some like me, I was immediately hooked with this game because the narrative immediately got me.
Yeah.
And then as the game, and then as those other stuff starting to come in more effectively, it just got better and better for me. But then for someone like Max, for who the story means basically nothing,
It's not that it means nothing to me. It's just that I need to be hooked by the actual game part of the game I'm playing first, and then the story can come later.
But yeah, just something to keep in mind for anyone listening and thinking about playing it.
Yeah. So, I suppose moving on then to the next dungeon, the factory, which was the first of the 3 main dungeons, I suppose you could call it in the game.
Yeah, I think the factory definitely was a step up from Black Isle. It wasn't nearly as...
It's not difficult to get better.
Well, no, but I mean, like, I feel like it definitely did feel a lot more puzzly.
Yeah, I think that was the point where like that dungeon was where it was like, okay, I can see the comparisons to a Zelda game now, because with Black Isle it was more like, this is fun, but it feels like a normal adventure game of the time.
Yeah.
Like you're just going through a level and doing stuff. Whereas this, it was like, okay, so there's branching paths and there's puzzles that I need to solve, and I thought it was really good personally. I quite enjoyed the factory.
Yeah, no, there was enough to, sort of deviate from the main path and get, I wouldn't say collectibles, because it's like health upgrades and maybe a pearl or something, but, it was enough to be like, I'm going to go this way, solve this puzzle, and then get a reward from it, rather than just, I'm going to take you through one path, and I can see the comparisons to Zelda in that regard, but yeah, it was definitely nice. It was definitely a nice step up from fucking Black Isle, which had nothing.
And also,
Nothing.
the factory has
Nothing.
some very good story beats in it as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's all complemented. I think that's a general theme with the dungeons, is they're all, even Black Isle to a point, they're all complemented by this narrative that, like Kyle said, is just constantly going, and if you're someone who cares about the narrative,
Yeah, that's a
then
good.
it
yeah.
will, it'll keep you hooked.
That is a good point. But it really is constant. Like, even if you look at a game like, we've made comparisons to Zelda before. Like, you look at a Zelda game, and the narrative in the Zelda game really just kind of comes to a halt most of the time when you enter a dungeon, and then it's all just like do the dungeon, and then you get out and you get back into story. But in Beyond, it really is story all the way through.
Yeah, and it's complemented by
really nice.
just the design of the, like, just little tiny hints here and there. Like, you see stuff through windows, and you're like, "Ooh, that's a little." That's
You
a
can
little
always go
shade.
and talk to your companion that
Yeah.
you're with, and they all like. I noticed that like every little checkpoint that you get to in each like dungeon or even outside dungeons, just each little like bit of progression you make, you can go and talk to them, and they like talk to you about what just happened.
And they might give you a little hint of
is
what
like
you
really
need to
neat.
do next and things like that.
And also, this is such a minor thing, but I quite like it, is how you save in that game. It just adds to like the. I don't know how you'd explain it. Like, it adds to the sort of grounding of a game, I guess you could call it, where it like feels like a part of.
It feels like for every
the world
every
instead of
mechanic
just-
they have in the game is explained through the in-game lore.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, it's like you have these discs that you put in to get the story beat, and you also save with it. So it's also a good time if you want to save. You can also be like, "Oh, I need to remind myself of this thing," or "I just got this disc. I'm gonna, look at it." But anyway, back to the factory. Before we, so the factory is definitely better, but definitely not the best it could have been. It's still kind of introducing you to things. Again, I'm trying to even remember the factory. What happened?
It starts off with the elevator that you got to fix, and you got to find fuses for it, and then you find Double H,
Yes, I remember it
Yeah.
now.
and then you fight the Reaper,
What was that? I remember moments.
the big
from it,
green
but
thing.
I'm talking like generally all through it. I'm struggling.
I'll talk about the factory for a bit. Fuck it, why not? I still thought the factory was pretty weak, to be honest.
Yeah,
From my point of view, it didn't feel that dungeony to me.
really.
I was getting hints of it, but I was still like, it still feels kind of linear.
See, if I was to, I think that one is probably the most Zelda dungeon to me, and then it's
Interesting.
a strong second, it being the slaughterhouse, because of it feels very water temple-y.
I think I didn't find the exploration of the factory that interesting. I found it very. It again felt like a little bit too hand-holdy to me.
Yeah.
Like, oh, there's an elevator. Okay, so I need to get a fuse, and I go to the power gen room to get a fuse, and like, there's no alternative to what I can do. I have to go do that. And like, I know it's weird to describe.
But isn't that just the same as in a Zelda dungeon when you have to go and collect some small keys?
Yeah, but you don't know where the keys are.
You don't necessarily know where the fuses are.
No, but it's a fair guess that the fuse is going to be in the power room.
Yeah.
And then, like, I think part of the thing for me is whenever I think of Zelda dungeons, I think of a lot of backtracking. Almost like Metroidvania in that sense, right?
Yeah.
And it didn't really feel like the factory had that.
I mean, I think this game did it in a way where it created a loop, and you do end up back in the main room or the main section.
Yeah.
But it takes you on a new path back.
Yeah, I get that.
I will add, this sounds a bit counterintuitive, but I find when I'm getting lost in a dungeon kind of thing, it can sometimes be a good thing, because it's almost like I'm finding all these different areas that, I never would have gone to.
Yeah.
I did find that with the factory, where I think even when I took, because you have to take a few screenshots, we have to take a few pictures to get evidence. I think I ended up taking the third one first. I was like, where the fuck do I get the first one? And of course I ended up talking to a partner who's like, oh, we need to get this thing. I was like, oh yeah, back. So of course I go back and then end up going a different way to how I came back, because I find this new path. I don't know, it was kind of all over the place, but in a good way, kind of thing.
I think the thing that stung me, because I finished Black Isle, and then I went straight onto doing the factory.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, I actually went back to Iris and then went straight to the factory. And the factory still felt like an introduction a little bit to me. But I was like, I've just had an introduction in the Black Isle.
Yeah.
So why am I having another one? Like, why does this feel like another kind of basic, fairly basic dungeon?
So maybe it just wasn't a big enough of a step up, and also you weren't in the right mindset.
Yeah. I was definitely a little bit pre-tilted from just finishing Black Isle, and yeah, it wasn't enough of a step up. It wasn't enough of a step up from that point, from the Black Isle to that, where I felt kind of justified.
Yeah.
I was like, just feels like I've been fucking debated, to be honest.
I mean, I don't personally agree, but I understand how you could think that. So
yeah, I think it was. I could see it was going places, but in my opinion, you should just fucking cut the Black Isle out completely. I think I would have been far more tolerable of the factory if that was the first thing you go.
I think you could have done Black Isle stuff in the factory.
Yes, definitely. There wasn't enough content in the Black Isle for it to be its entirely own thing, aside from the story that happens in.
But that's
Black Isle.
that's what I was gonna say. Was at that point would it be cutting out? Because I still think gameplay is important, but the story is the main point of this game.
Aside from the whole, this is a trial to see if you can join Iris or not. It doesn't really offer much in terms of gameplay that couldn't be rolled into another dungeon. And then at that point, it's just personal preference, really.
Yeah.
And developer preference, I suppose, more than anything. But yeah.
Also, this is the dungeon that introduces the stealth.
Yep.
You say introduces stealth.
For everyone except you, it introduces
You don't
stealth.
necessarily have to stealth it. All I'm saying is that you don't necessarily have to stealth it. You can just kill them.
Which I would say is a good thing.
Yeah. I would say it's a fucking terrible thing.
I'd say it gives the player options to play how they want to.
I don't think it does.
Really?
I think it makes the stealth segment really weak. And it makes the easier choice more appealing.
Is the combat necessarily easier?
If you use the charged up attack, yeah.
But you were saying how you were taking damage all the time and had to heal.
Well, at the beginning, until I realised that I could just get Paige to do a special attack.
If you if you have the upgrade to the special attack.
Yes.
Which you have to buy. You may not necessarily have that.
True. I mean, even then, I still think it'd be pretty simple.
There are forced stealth sections as well, though.
Yeah, the forced stealth bits are a million times more fun and better stealth sections than the non-forced stealth bits. And I think they're better for the game, because instead of the arena and the segment of the game having to be designed to suit 2 playstyles, it can be specifically tailored to suit 1 playstyle. The only one you can do, which in turn makes it better, I think.
See, I would argue if all of the stealth was mandatory, I would have got bored with it by the end. Like, when I was in the factory, there were certain bits I did fully stealth, and there were other bits that I would take out one guy, run away, and then take out the other guy, and things like that. And like, I never went into full combat because that's just not how I wanted to play it. But
yeah,
I would like essentially assassinate them, right?
Could you still not bait out one of them, even on the mandatory stealth sections?
You could, but if it goes wrong, which sometimes it would, there was nothing you could do. Like, you're dead.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose. I think it's probably it just depends at that point then. I think but maybe the game could have maybe had a slightly more lenient version of full stealth, which lets you do things like take out a guy and run away instead of the insta kill. But I think it should have done something like that instead of letting you do whatever the fuck you wanted, seemingly.
I'm not gonna lie. Until I watched Max play it recently, I actually didn't know you could not stealth those bits. Like, whenever it got to one of those things where it presented it, like, because obviously there's some bits where it's like you have to fight, but I assumed any time where it started as a stealth thing, you just had to stealth it, because any time I got caught out by them, they just seemed way too hard. Like, it seemed like I just couldn't get through the shield, so I was like, fuck it, I'm running away. I didn't realize until I saw Max play, you have to, like, wait for them to attack, and then the shield goes down, and then you get in and attack them. I never put that together. I was just like, fuck this. I'm just a reporter. I'm not meant to fight things.
Yeah, no, I never went into full combat, personally. Like,
No.
unless it was mandatory. I'd always go for the tanks on the back.
That makes sense. I suppose then, unless anyone has anything else I want to add about the factory specifically. Alright. I suppose we can move on to the slaughterhouse. And I kind of want to start here. Because the slaughterhouse for me is when I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. I see it. And I think the slaughterhouse does a few things really well. The way you get into it is kind of cool. I think that's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah.
And
even if the collision on the lasers sucks.
Sucks for you.
yeah, that is true.
Did you struggle with that, Nico?
No, I got it first time.
So Keenan's the only one.
Yep.
That's weird, because like when I first played it, I struggled with it as well. And then when I watched Keenan play it for his first time, he struggled with it. So I was like really dreading doing it again, especially because I already knew Max was already not enjoying it up to that point. I was just like dreading watching him endlessly bump into that fucking laser and then get to the point like, fuck this game. But then he did it first time. I'm like, what the hell? How did you do that? And then I did it afterwards, and I did it first time.
It wasn't
And I
quite
was like,
technically first time.
well, the first time you took a proper run-up, you did it.
Yeah. The very first time I was like at an angle and I kind of just like one up and I was like, oh, okay, I see. I think the slaughterhouse is good for a few reasons. It's the first area that introduces mandatory stealth. And as we just came off the back of mentioning, I think the mandatory stealth sections are really fucking fun. Like, without a doubt, the best part of that game, probably for me personally.
Even if you've been half stealthing before, it really does sort of reinforce all the mechanics it's taught you in the past to sort of bring it all together.
Yeah, exactly. Things like shooting M discs at walls to kind of distract them, make them look the other way, and then quickly roll past. Things like that are all fantastic.
That's a thing you can do.
Yeah. It's not super reliable all the time,
But it's still a thing.
but it's reliable enough that you.
It's
if a guy
definitely-
is just staring in one direction.
It's definitely more reliable than rolling in front of a guard.
Yeah, definitely more reliable than that.
Yeah, that makes sense for that section. Okay.
But yeah, that bit was super fun. What else was there? I really enjoyed how it was split into like 3 parts over multiple floors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was cool.
Yeah.
It was kind of the first one where you could really just go in any order you want.
Yes,
It's like
it
split
really
into-
felt like some proper explorational
Yeah.
elements coming out there. There was some decent just combat encounters as well.
Yeah.
I don't know, for me, it really felt like the kind of a really nice blend of all the different elements of it. And also started enjoying the story stuff as well. At that part, because I was like, oh, these guys are really fucked up, aren't they? Jesus.
And also, that dungeon made quite a lot of use of the hovercraft.
It did.
Yeah.
Actually, that's kind of another point I completely forgot about. The hovercraft is really fun. Like,
Yes.
it handles so well, and it just feels awesome to use.
It does.
And yeah, the fact that it made so much use of it was really, really cool.
Yeah. It almost, at the beginning, it felt like one of those things that was like, why have they put so much work into this thing?
Yeah, it would have been a shame for them to not have you use it in the slaughterhouse. Because outside of that, you really only use it to just drive around the town and then the races.
Yeah.
Yeah, get
That's
from
it.
point A to point B.
Which I'm glad that they definitely made a whole dungeon kind of centering around use of that.
Yeah.
I think the slaughterhouse is great. For me, the slaughterhouse should be how that game is. Personally, I feel like it was a great example of what that game does right.
Yeah.
And that's where I was really like, oh, okay. Is it like I left the slaughterhouse midway through it, and as opposed to last week where I was like, I don't really want to play more. I woke up this morning like, yeah, I want to fucking finish this thing. Like, this was super fun. Some of the puzzles were interesting, especially a lot of the fuse puzzles.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was some.
Because I mean, in the factory, the fuse puzzles basically meant to go and find a fuse, and just whack it in here. But I mean, actually, even the puzzles that just like hit the gate and then quickly get down to the hovercraft, but like you can shoot the gate with the M-disc launcher, shoot the gate button, and then like quickly like get down quicker that way.
Yeah.
Felt a lot more fun than the factory did. It felt a lot more
Even
involved.
just getting into one of the is this button opens up the gate, so you then find out I can jump on top of this gate and use it to sort of rise up and then jump into a vent or something like that to sort of get behind the electrical wall that was blocking me.
To then let Double H.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that felt really cool.
Yeah, little bits like that felt really cool. Also, the fact that there's a place in the town called the Slaughterhouse, and everyone's like, I guess this is fine. Like, yeah, sure, why not? I'm okay with this. I found quite funny. Anyway, I've talked enough about how much I liked it.
I also like just the progression of getting to that point, because it's not like, oh, we're just going to invisible wall you out of the slaughterhouse, right? It's like, no, you have to get this upgrade which lets you jump over. Again, I think it's just emphasising the sort of grounded...
Well, that is a similar way to the way collecting the evidence to get the key codes from the governor works. Is they work as a kind of an artificial in-universe gate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Be
it
like,
does
you
it.
can't
Yeah.
proceed until you've done all the shit that the game wants you to do in this area.
I really liked how it did its progression, because it always felt natural, in a sense.
Yeah.
It always felt like,
Definitely.
okay, I'm going to this area because... Like, I don't feel restricted by this area. It feels like, no, I just have to go to this area. And I don't want to go to any other area. Because for one reason or another. Like, the slaughterhouse you can't go into unless you have to jump.
Yeah.
So it's always these restrictions that feel natural.
Yeah, contextually you don't have what you need to go with it.
And in a like a very minor positive way, each of those as well is like overcoming what the alpha sections are doing.
Yeah.
Like you're passing their barrier or you're passing their guard. Like you're getting into essentially restricted areas by bypassing their security.
Yeah. Which is awesome.
It is. That's it. Anyone want to tell us their thoughts on the slaughterhouse? Kyle?
Yeah, I think we're done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just me monologuing about the slaughterhouse for like 10 minutes. But I mean, if we're good with that, if we want to move on from that, then I suppose that's fine. Actually, there is one thing I quite liked. I quite like the bits where it would. Yes, you can take it whenever, but if you go to the parts where it specifically is obviously intended for you to take the picture there, quite often there are guards looking out like the window that you're meant to look out of, and you can just kind of walk up, kind of sneak up behind them, and then take the picture, and then sneak off, which I quite liked.
Yeah.
I feel like it would have been very easy to either not put enemies there at all, or put enemies there that you had to fight.
Yeah. Instead, they went the in-between route that lets you do what you want to again.
Which I know I complained about that earlier, but I think in this situation it does work quite well.
Yeah.
Because your objective there isn't to get through the area. The area doesn't need to be designed to get through like the other ones do, where this area is literally designed for you to take a picture of a thing.
Still disagree, but fair enough.
That's fair.
I will mention then, I believe it was, I can't remember, I think it was the factory actually, where you took a picture of the person in the barrel as one of the pieces of evidence. There's a point where you have to split up from Paige, and when you come back, that's when they take him.
Mm-hmm.
But when you split up from him, you can see all the barrels passing through, and you can take a picture of the X-ray scanner there.
Oh, yes.
And so you can do it way earlier.
Oh, that bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas I noticed that when Max was going through his final bit and it was showing the pictures he took it towards the end of the dungeon where you're actually down on that floor. So I thought it was quite cool that it gives you opportunities to take the pictures at different points.
Yeah, like as long as you can see the thing, you can take a picture of it. It doesn't matter where you can see it from.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, is very cool. So I suppose we can go on to the moon next.
The moon?
The moon.
Gee, spoilers.
You go to the moon. I actually briefly, I suppose we could cover finding the beluga.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a fair point. Did you struggle figuring that out, Max? Just curious.
Briefly.
Yeah, we were watching.
I struggled to figure out that the code was on his shoes. Because I was paying so much attention to what was being said on the M disc and not what was being shown.
Yeah.
That it just completely passed me by. And it wasn't until I talked to Double H and he's like, "Hey, Paige was sure fond of those shoes. If only we could get a better look at them." Like, I see what you're trying to do there, Double H.
That was a really good moment in that, like, the game, like, anytime you pick up a thing, you put in your inventory, and it shows you the screen of, like, here's, the info on, like, the thing you picked up, and it shows it to you. And you can use the right stick to, like, turn it around and stuff and look all around it. And most of the time, that does nothing. It's just a nice little thing. But then in this one instance, it actually is, like, part of a puzzle, which I thought was really cool. Because you have to specifically turn up his shoes to see that a secret code's written on the underside of them. And then you use that to find the beluga. Yeah. The spaceship. Which is, I thought was really cool.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. It was quite a cool little thing.
Yeah.
So,
I wish I'd maybe dropped a few more hints to it earlier. Maybe not like right before, but maybe a little bit before that happened. I don't know. It feels a little bit cheap having an NPC tell you so directly.
I actually noticed that one of the kids at the lighthouse tells you about the shoes as well.
Oh, really?
This time playing it, yeah. Like way earlier on in the game.
Okay.
Way before it's relevant.
Nice. That's so cool.
I will say, before we get onto the moon, I think it's really cool that they randomise the codes. Because remember, we touched on that when he was finding the code to the boots.
Yeah.
And apparently we found out it was randomised. And it was like... So
you can't just write down all the codes or find them online.
Yeah, or find them online, mainly.
No, back in 2003, I think finding it online was less of a thing.
Well, in like strategy guides and stuff, like
they could have raised a strategy guide with all the codes in it. Yeah, no, the fun of the beluga is pretty cool. And getting all the bits to repair it is fun, and then missing the bit on the table was great as well.
I guess it's also worth talking about. Because you do have to do a fair amount of it, the side content.
I didn't do that
Of,
much
like,
of it.
getting the pearls.
You
Well, because
actually
you
have
end
to
up...
do very little of it.
Yeah, you don't
Do you
have
have
to.
to?
I was going to say, if you
I mean,
have
I
money,
literally did-
you can buy a lot of them.
Yeah, of the caves around the map, I did like 2 caves, and I did the volcano.
And,
That's basically
and
it. Like,
the
I mean, I suppose the
Alpha
races could
section
be.
headquarters as well.
Oh, yeah, you also did some of the headquarters. In
Oh
town.
yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I suppose I did 2 of those as well.
Yeah.
You have to do a decent amount of it.
Yeah, I mean, if the fact that I didn't feel like I did much side content, but I did, I think is probably testament to the quality of the side content.
True. Yeah.
Like, I feel like if you're sat there feeling like you're going out of your way to do side content, then it's not that great. But the fact that I would just be poking my nose around the city and be like, oh, okay, here's the thing. And then I would do the thing. And then like, that was fun. And they felt like nicely bite-sized chunks of content. They just felt like a nice 10-minute detour, like on your way to Iris headquarters or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. I would say the Alpha Section headquarters, which you get with the special key when you go into there. I'd say that was probably the most interesting side content for me.
Yeah, that was a fucking highlight.
Yeah, like the stealth sort of shined in that area, I think.
Yes, yeah.
It was a really, really strong like design, and the fact that you sort of had to go through it without even getting seen once. There was nowhere to hide after you got spotted or anything like that.
Well, it's just you got instantly killed after you got spotted.
Yeah,
Shot the cannon.
Exactly. And then once you do get to the end of it, there's that chase scene, which is just fantastic. Like,
Yeah. I actually think I prefer the first chase scene, but
oh really?
I think so. It's only a little bit. Not really much in it between the two of them for me, but yeah, I think I slightly prefer that one.
That's fair.
The second one felt a little bit too on rails.
It was definitely on rails for sure. Yeah.
I get that they both are,
Yeah.
but the second one felt a little bit more.
I definitely got shot more in the first one. Like, I don't
Yes,
think I
yeah.
got shot at all in the second one.
I think I maybe got hit once, but I was fine other than that. I mean, for the first one, I failed like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah. Yeah, no, personally, the one that I was talking about, I think it was mainly just the different camera angles and stuff that it gives you. Like, you commented on that one where you dived over a thing, and it gives you just a quick shot of you diving, and then goes back to the previous camera.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I think it just sort of made the experience to me. I don't know.
For sure. No, yeah, I think it goes back to what I was saying about in my initial thoughts where I said, or the general thoughts where I said, some of it kind of felt ahead of its time in a way. And I think those cinematic points, it just gave me those like Uncharted vibes, which didn't come out for probably a fucking decade after. God knows how long after. But yeah, it was really well executed. It didn't feel tacked on, it just felt very cool. That's all I can say for it. Like, that is the intended effect, and it did it really fucking well. Yeah.
I really liked. Fine, I guess I'm starting this, aren't I? I really.
Kyle, do you want to start this one?
Actually, yeah, Carl. Yeah, you talk about the moon.
Huh? What?
Tell us about the moon.
Well, it's big and it's round and it's made of cheese. Although that's disputed by some. I'm pretty sure it's made of cheese. I mean, come on, let's face it.
That's our moon.
The facts are obvious.
We're talking about
Yes.
Selena here.
Oh.
Selena Gomez.
Yeah, I thought she was great on Wizards of Waverly Place.
Fuck's sake.
What have I done?
I don't know. What have you done? Anyway.
All right, on to you, Max.
Continue. Tell us about the moon, Kyle.
I
The
don't know.
moon in Beyond Good and Evil, not...
I feel like I'm not as good at talking about the puzzle stuff as like Max is.
Okay, I'll just cut this entire segment. Max,
No.
you just go
Leave
for it.
You leave this in. People
That was
people
a
need
great.
the
That was a
people-
great cheese tangent.
Everyone needs to know
Well,
that the moon is made of cheese and that Selena Gomez was on Wizards of Waverly Place.
I'll tell
In
you.
that case-
I'll tell you something about the moon. It's great until you do a sequence break and then you soft lock your game.
Hey, got him. All right, Nico, do you want to tell us about the moon then?
I will say for the moon, this pretty much was just mostly puzzle focused, and I felt like the few puzzle stuff they got in there was, I think, pretty good. Like, pretty well executed. Like, it does... I did actually get... Because usually throughout the game there's been some kind of puzzle, except for, like, a few areas, but I've been like, what the hell do I do? I felt like with the moon, that happened quite a bit. I was kind of going through back and forth and just going, what the hell do I do? And then as soon as I realised, it all kind of clicked into place. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I remember it being... I do remember it being longer than it actually was on the second playthrough. I think it was more just the fact that the puzzles themselves were actually a lot more.
The moon itself is a very short area. Really, there's not really many areas I can think about with the moon. But it played long because of the puzzles. And
it's funny you mentioned the puzzles. I found the puzzles on the moon the easiest.
Yeah, like you started streaming just after you beat the slaughterhouse to us on Discord.
Yeah.
So we saw like the end of your playthrough. And I couldn't believe how you just sped through those puzzles on the moon.
I kind of just
It
smashed
was like
through
you
the moon
knew the
super
answers
quickly.
before you even saw them.
Especially the one with Paige.
I was going to bring that up. That needed to be a little bit more puzzly, in my opinion.
I will
I
counter...
thought it was until I watched you do it, because I spent ages twisting those things back around, like trying to figure out which way it's supposed to go, and then you just like did like two rotations. And
I will counter argument that though. I know it's simple as hell, but man, that felt really satisfying when you just like turn it and
awesome.
just like you only turn that little bit.
It felt great.
And it's weird because you almost feel excited when you realise I've got to do this again. Is it going to work again?
Yeah.
Oh my god, I can't wait.
While it was very simple, it felt really nice. The satisfaction of it just kind of made for it.
Yeah. It was. The puzzle felt good. I felt it could have been a little bit more puzzly though.
Yeah.
Although apparently, if you're Kyle, it was.
On my first playthrough, I did the exact same thing where I was just like turning random ones to try and make it work. But
I feel like that would have been cool.
I thought about it a little bit more, and I was like, should I just move the source first before rotating anything else?
See, I just did that by complete accident. I just turned the source when it did the fucking reflection.
I want to say that I was big braining it and like knew that it would work, but I totally didn't. I was just kind of moving the one I was already attached to see what would happen.
I wonder.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I almost wonder if the devs even realized that you can do it that quickly.
Oh, definitely.
I was
like
gonna say, I
the
feel
patterns
like that.
the patterns that it made, definitely.
There's no way some designer didn't have that scribbled down on a bit of paper, like which way do you do everything? And, like,
There was no way that
sketching
was
out.
accidental.
Maybe.
Just how well it just blended into each other.
know.
I don't know. It felt.
I mean, yeah, possibly.
But either way, it was satisfying.
Yeah, the moon was definitely... It felt less complete than the slaughterhouse, but it felt like it completed the story very well.
And
If that makes sense.
I will say the ship sections were pretty cool. Like the first one where you've got all the other ships kind of chasing you, and then you got the fucking music booming. It's all
That's
pretty
true.
cool.
Because like the actual dungeon bit is pretty short, but it does have the flying bits afterwards.
Yeah, as a final dungeon, it's very good. As a dungeon, it's not great.
As a thing to wrap it off as like a finale type thing.
Yeah, the chase sequence when
Perfect.
you're chasing the big ship with General Keck in it.
Yep.
And yeah, the bit where you're kind of flying and there's all like the Hylian reinforcements come in and all that bit is great. As well as going down to the crypt and just not listening to what they're saying. It's all fantastic.
Yeah, when the ships came in, I took a moment before landing just to like watch the battle a little bit, just because it was for how old it was. There was a lot going on in that scene.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's very
I'm
cool.
just upset it wouldn't let me land before I killed some of the ships. After you kind of beat a lot of the dungeon, you're up in the beluga flying around, and you want to land on a landing pad to go down to the crypt to confront the final boss, basically. And you all these dom ships come out, and it's made to seem like you have to take them out before you land, which these guys did. I just went straight to the landing pad to see if I could land. And it almost looked like it was going to work
Yeah.
for a bit. It very almost looked like it was going to work.
And you got shot up.
And then, you get shot up. You're like, oh, we can't land, we're getting shot too much. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll go do it. But it would have been great if it... Because that would have been the second time that dungeon that I done something. You guys were like, what? You can just do that?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, because there was that other bit where you're supposed to get out of the beluga, go into the hovercraft, and then get the torpedo to follow you so that it goes into the barrier that's blocking you, and then you can get through. But then Max found out, just through sheer brute force and lack of patience, that you can just shoot the barrier with the beluga. You don't have to do the torpedo thing at all.
Yep.
That's actually
what?
That's actually what I did as well. I only realised after I docked, I was like, oh, that's what you were supposed to do. Okay, well, this was way easier, so...
Well, it wasn't even brute force. It was more just... that just felt like the obvious solution.
Just say it's kind of
fair enough.
That's just something I did, and then it just worked. So I didn't really think
it's
there was
really
another.
Cool that they put those different optional things in there so that you can get the same result. But
yeah, I agree with that generally in every other case than the first one you brought.
yeah,
but no, it is cool. Although I don't know why you would get out and drag the mine there with the hovercraft, because that just seems needlessly complicated. So I suppose the next part of the minutes of talk about is the final boss battle, probably.
Oh yeah.
That felt like a very sudden step up in terms of how difficult it was.
It was.
Yeah.
I still personally didn't find it that difficult, aside from when I had no hearts.
I feel like it would have been pretty disappointing if it was as difficult as the rest of the game.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, but I was also kind of expecting something more difficult, but not that difficult.
Fair.
Not this fucking multi-stage control reversing boss that does all sorts of shit like that.
God, the fucking control reversing was so good.
You know what? Once I got what was happening, I didn't find the control reversing too bad, because I literally just stood still. And again, Carl and Keenan, in fact, all three of you can attest to this. I just stood still, and then it was like, whichever side he appears from, I just need to press the stick in the opposite direction and hit attack.
Yeah.
I want to say it took you a good, 20 seconds at least to even realise that the controls had been reversed.
You were just running around what the fuck's going on?
Yeah, I didn't realise for so long. I'm like, what the fuck is this?
I also did like how just before the boss, you ended up you had about 5 K-bups, and you used 4 of them just on random stuff. And then you got into the boss and you had 1, and you're like, oh no.
But then, earlier before that...
Oh my god, yes.
Max gave one of the K-bups to his, to Double H. And me and Keenan were like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you giving him a K-bop? You're going to need it.
Bearing in mind that he gave Double H no PA1s.
Yeah, so he had 2 hearts.
Anyone who hasn't played this game has no idea what we're saying right now. Just saying.
Yeah, but that's some assumption that they at least know.
PA1s are heart containers.
Basically, all you need to know...
And a K-bup is a fairy.
Basically, all you need to know is he had 2 hearts, and he was giving him a full recovery for 2 hearts, right?
Although, in my defense, the time I beat the boss, I didn't even need that. I didn't get hit once.
No.
Yeah, which was pretty great. But it was just funny how, that... But the first time you went through that, and you didn't have any K-bups, you did end up using the K-bups from your teammates.
Yes, yeah. The first time I was trying to see what happened. Yeah, I had to quickly grab
once we knew,
even though he was even though he'd been repossessed into a incorporeal being, I could still take it out of his inventory because
of course,
naturally.
That boss honestly made me think that it's something I hadn't considered before, but I feel like, and this obviously wouldn't super apply to Max because he wasn't. Well, how invested were you in the story by the end, Max? At all? Yeah, okay, that's what I figured. So it wouldn't super apply to Max, but it's kind of interesting the way the boss plays with the idea of actually in a way making it more challenging by tilting you emotionally in the way that it throws out your friends at you and makes you fight them, and it's like double H saying like you have to give up Miss Jade, and it's like I was just the first time I played it I was like no this is horrible.
Yeah,
it like legit was throwing me off.
That had literally no impact on me.
Well, yeah, of course.
Because I'm a cold, heartless bastard.
it's
I was
true.
going to say,
obviously.
throughout that
can
game,
attest.
it's like, hey, this person's dead. Hey, your children are dead. Hey, your old friends are fighting again. You know, it's like, keeps
When you
prodding.
find Paige and he's dead, I just wanted to crack jokes, to be honest.
I could tell.
I thought, I was like, I know I shouldn't. I know this is meant to be like a really emotional moment,
I
but I kind of want to make like a pork joke.
I mean, you did.
Kind of want to. I did. I did
did,
eventually.
yeah.
I gave it because I decided I was like, "Fuck you guys! This is me playing through it. I can make whatever jokes I want to make."
I was gonna say, we've already gone through that, so.
Yeah, you've already done it. Like,
I just love how like I'm remembering back to when I watched Keenan play it, and like Keenan going through that whole thing of like, no, he's not dead. And I was like, Keenan, you gotta go. He's dead. Just move on. I've been through this. You gotta move on. And you're like, no, he's not dead.
At one point, I was in such denial that I was mashing the interact button because I was like, maybe if I do it like 20 times, he'll get up.
Meanwhile, fucking Max is just sat there like, oh no, what now we taste?
guess we're having barbecue tonight, boys.
I just
Roast
love...
pork.
Well, the thing is, then I went up to the stop and saw there were 3 fucking
I was-
pressure plates
I-
on the elevator, and I was like, well, that's just fucking
I
obvious,
was
isn't
just
it?
about to bring that
Yeah.
up. It's like... Because I didn't go up the elevator to eventually see the 3 buttons. I went back, which eventually was my save game's demise, but that's not the point. I went back, and that's when you realise he's alive.
But yeah, like
So that was a
like,
surprise. Well, half
I
surprise.
obviously noticed that the first time I played it, but like I didn't know what to expect of the game from the game at that point. So I figured maybe someone else, like maybe Han would show up with the rest of Iris, and then he would be the third.
No,
person
it's going to
on
be
Secundo.
Secundo.
The weightless hologram.
Yeah.
Perfect. I mean, he interacted with that console.
He did.
So it's possible.
Anyway.
Yeah, I suppose that's kind of a lot of the moon summed up, really.
Yeah, there was a nice bit when you take a photo of the General Keck with the alien, and you get a little bit of, I guess, backstory or just story in general.
I didn't
about
hear.
Paige.
I wasn't really paying attention.
It's essentially hinting towards what you see at the very end.
Yeah, you see it at the end, but it's just nice little.
What do you see at the end exactly?
When the Dom's priest says the pig has hidden your origins from you, and he tells you that you're the source of his power, and that were you listening to any of that?
Kind of.
Basically, he said that Jade was at one point the source of his power, and they stole it from him and turned her into a human to try and destroy the Dom's priest. But now he's gonna try and get her back and
It
become.
was all
powerful.
very wishy-washy, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
Wishy-washy. Whatever.
Wibbly wobbly,
Wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey stuff. You know how it is.
Well, at the very least, I want to know if you agree. Both times, to be honest, when I defeated the final boss after getting through that reverse section, I found it really satisfying man, I did it.
Yeah.
It felt like an accomplishment.
Yeah.
Which
Not particularly, no.
no, Okay.
Not really.
all right, just me then.
As soon as maybe these guys did.
No, I felt
I
it.
did. Yeah,
As soon as I realised how to beat it, I was like, okay, I just do this.
well, yeah, though it's obvious what you have to do once you know.
Yeah, but
what
it's
it
not like
is.
there was any challenge in doing it, is what I mean.
Well, I guess that's where it differs. I found it hard.
Yeah, that's the different part. Like for me, it's just a case of moving them to opposite direction and attack, and then just stand still again.
See, I think it might have been a lot more impactful for me because I'm a sucker for incorporating story and theming into mechanics.
And you're also really bad at games in general, so
It wasn't about the difficulty of
That
it though.
probably heightened the sense of accomplishment.
I think I did it second time when I played it my second run. Like
How many times did it take you the first one?
too many.
Exactly. So it's that plus the amount you took in your second run. That's how many times it took you.
Not really, because it's a different experience the second time.
You're a different experience the second time.
Either way, I really like it when a game does something like in this game where it's like he's messing with your spirit, and so it's like, okay, so now my controls are all messed up.
Yeah, I like that.
It's like what is it that happens in Metal Gear 1?
Oh, where you have to plug the controller into the second port.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that sort of stuff always gets me. I love it.
I actually have another point I want to bring up, given how we've kind of come to the end of the moon section and we're onto miscellaneous now, I suppose. There is one section that I think we can all unanimously agree on is actually fucking incredible. And that is every single bit of ambient music in that game.
I was gonna bring up the point of
Actually, so good.
the soundtrack in general. Yeah, no,
Yeah, the soundtrack. I don't know why I specified ambient music there. Yes, all the soundtrack and all the music in that game is fucking incredible. It's so good.
It's a shame
really
it's a shame that we were emulating it, because I feel like there was some emulator issues.
Oh,
like
definitely with audio.
Yeah, with the audio, and it
With it cutting
and
out
it cut out. Yeah, so I kind of
Yeah.
wish I could hear the full thing and it accompany all the scenes and not cut out would be nice. Because it was really good. Like the music in general was just, in fact, just the sound design in general was just such a highlight of that game.
It has to be, because in like a visual medium like movies or games, and we've talked about how this game is basically kind of trying to emulate a movie anyway. Like so much of how any story plays off in that kind of medium is through the music. Like we've all seen those videos on YouTube of like the same footage but with different music over it. Like one looks like a romance movie, and then the second one it looks like a horror movie. Right? Like so much of how you feel in any moment is dictated by the music in the background. It basically is like telling you how you're supposed to feel right now.
Yeah.
And the music in that game is just not only so good in itself, but used in such great ways.
Yes, like I love the difference between the music in the bar and then the music in Mamago's compared to the music in like ambient caves, compared to the music when you take a picture of something that's meant to be like disturbing or whatever. The music is fantastic. It's so good.
I think on top of all of that as well is it's so unique. Like it doesn't sound like any other game.
Yeah, no, it really doesn't. I think that's initially just what got me into that game was, that initial fight at the beginning with the freaking alien dudes.
Yeah.
Like near the end where it goes into slow motion, then you got that kind of not ambient music, but you got that sort of soundtrack in the background where it's all like angelic and
it's
stuff.
like it starts off all really dramatic and
it's all dramatic, and then it sort of goes like
it suddenly
angelic
goes quiet
and
and then like goes
slow
into
motion and that for me was like, okay, this is awesome. Straight from the get-go. And it did that quite a few times where it went in slow motion and sort of had its like angelic music, I guess you could call it. I don't really know what you would describe it as. It's very unique.
There was that bit during one of the final chase scene in town where you're running along the rooftops and it suddenly goes quiet and you hear Jade like breathing heavily.
Yeah.
There's like a faint heartbeat.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, the music in that game is really something else. Anywho, I suppose before we close it out, does anyone have any more notes about the game they want to make?
Mama Goes was great. There we go.
Yes.
Bacon Rhinos is 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. The only other little thing I've got is like the world itself. I think is very strong. Like the way that they've like incorporated all these like animal characters feels so natural, especially by the end of it.
It made me wish there was more, but I'm not saying that as like, I know initially I said that as a kind of bad, but I think going back into that point, I think I'm very happy and satisfied with what I got, and the world's tied up in a brilliant way. I just want more. I'm just left I really want more.
I think that's indicative of good world building,
But that's what I'm saying.
right?
Yeah,
It's
I would want a sequel to this. Not I want more to the original game. I just want more of this world.
You just want more of the world to experience it and see what else is out there.
Yeah, exactly.
I would agree to that with some extent, I think.
Yeah?
I would like to see a sequel, just see them expand on gameplay elements more.
Yeah.
And because I did like the world. I thought it was interesting enough. But I think they'd have, like, an opportunity to do both of those things with the sequel. Both, expand on the world more, but also expand on gameplays more. Maybe make it a little bit,
I mean...
Because... Yes, Carl?
The sequel we are getting, I'm telling you, is going to be nothing like the original.
Yeah,
Yes,
I think it's going to
exactly.
be a completely different
I'm
mechanics.
still excited for it, but it's going to be a
the-
completely different game.
That's actually the point I was kind of going to move on to. Is from what I've seen of the sequel, which is the prequel technically, I think.
It is, yes.
It's called 2, but it is a prequel. Yeah.
Don't know why they did that.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be a completely different game, which is cool. I'm all for them swapping it up.
Yes.
But yeah, it should be an interesting one. But yeah, I suppose there's nothing else to say other than that. Yeah, so Beyond Good and Evil, play it. Maybe don't. So let's start with Keenan. Would you recommend someone play Beyond Good and Evil?
Yeah, I think overall, no matter what you're into, you're going to enjoy the game, right? You're going to get a lot more out of it if you're a story person, as we found out with Max.
Yeah.
The strongest point of the game is the story. But I would argue that everything it tries to do, it either does well, or it's sort of like an infant version of a good system that we got in the future. Like, it does a lot of stuff to make the game feel more cinematic than a lot of the games around at the time. Yeah, I'd recommend it, definitely.
Okay. Kyle.
Oh, yes. Yes, I would recommend everyone should play this game. Absolutely friggin' everybody. I mean, it's funny because, I even, as you said, the story is the main, highlight of the game, and, combat-wise, it's not as strong. But even, people on that end of the spectrum who prefer more that, combat-heavy, mechanical kind of game, like Max, I feel like pretty much anybody could find something to enjoy in this game.
Yeah.
I will say, if you don't like stealth, then you might not like this game.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, it does give you options to not use stealth at all.
Although it is going to be slightly more difficult, but you kind of expect that.
Yeah.
I suppose, I probably would recommend it. I would just say know what kind of games you like before you go into it, and just be prepared for especially the first few hours to just be a little bit of a slog, if you are more gameplay inclined than story inclined. But I think once you get past that bit, the factory's decent, the slaughterhouse is really great, and then the moon just kind of does tie it all off with some really nice set pieces as well. I'd recommend it. But yeah, just with that one little caveat of know what kind of person you are, which I think is good to know anyway.
Or even use this game to explore what it is you like about.
Yeah. This is true. This is true. It'd be a very good indicator of that.
Another caveat. If you're gonna play it anytime soon, maybe don't play it on Steam.
Yeah. Maybe don't play it on Steam.
Yeah.
As of January 2021, it's a little fucked right now.
Only a bit.
I was reading into the PC Gaming Wiki entry and all the different versions of it, and there's 6 or 7 different digital versions. All of them are slightly different, have their own jank that you've got to deal with.
Nice.
So I don't know if buying it on another platform would fix it, but
I honestly just feel like the best option at the moment is just to emulate it, which sucks because I don't want to condone what is essentially piracy, but
well, I suppose what we can say is buy it on a platform that you
and then
own, and
yes,
then
then emulate it. Yeah, do something like that. Because Nico, how about you?
yeah, like everyone said, I don't recommend playing it on PC unless you want a bad time trying to fix it. Which I did, but it was still really jank. So, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like this might be the first time that we've had a fairly across-the-board consensus about a game. I mean, it's only the fourth one.
You know, it also occurs to me now, by complete coincidence, like, that, basically the previous episode I was talking about how, Mario Galaxy is, like, pretty much my favorite game. And now in this immediately, next episode, I'm like, no, this one is. I
like to think every game we play is your new favourite game.
Yeah.
So that means Dark
Souls. Get to Dark Souls.
Good thing we haven't done that episode yet. Speaking of next episodes, we're not going to tell you what we're doing next because we can't keep to schedules.
And we don't know.
I was going to say,
Just so
I would have happily said, but we haven't discussed it yet.
Anyway, until next time when we play whatever game we play next, this is the end of
Flawless.
the show.
Flawless
Bye.
outro.
Bye.
Bye?
Bye.
Bye.
Is
Say
it?
bye,
Is
Kyle.
this ending?
Say bye.
Nah.